Welcome and thank you all for joining us for When a Guide is Not a Guide using LibApps for web design. My name is Molly Maloney and I will be your moderator for this session. So we're going to start with a little housekeeping like the other sessions. This session is being recorded. In order to allow for the clearest listening and recording experience, please remain muted unless invited to speak. During the presentation, please use the chat box to ask any questions you have. We will have time during and at the end of the presentation to ask your questions. Next, I would like to introduce you to our speakers today. Emily Underwood is a research and instruction librarian at Hobart and William Smith Colleges in Geneva, New York. Teaching information literacy is one of her passions. She is also interested in health literacy and doing what she can to help dismantle the stigma surrounding mental health. In her spare time, she enjoys listening to leadership, personal finance, and popular psychology books. Audiobooks are the best, as well as taking her dog on long walks. Tricia McEldowney is the college archivist at Hobart and William Smith Colleges in Geneva, New York. She enjoys making Hobart and William Smith history relevant and exciting for current students. Interacting with myriad campus constituents, she strives to keep valuable history in the forefront of current decision-making and thought processes. Her background in graphic design has proved an unexpected asset to the library. Tricia is a fervent fan of the Cleveland Browns and all things Harry Potter. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So we are going to talk a lot about LibApps today and about library websites. And Molly kind of gave some nice background about Tricia and myself. So I guess before I give everything away, we'll just kind of get started and start talking about the kind of redesign project that we worked on for the HWS library, and this would probably work way better if I was sharing the screen that I'm looking at with the rest of you. So let me share my screen with you now, and you all can see, hopefully. Are you guys looking at my PowerPoint slide?
We are.
Excellent. Okay. Now that you can see, we have a title and we have names. And we can go ahead and move on to the next little bit.
All right, so I'm going to kick things off, just give you guys a little bit of background information about this project and how it was presented to us. The library leadership team came to 3 of us in August of 2019. The 3 of us were Emily, myself, and a 3rd member, Tricia. And as you know, Emily is the research and instruction librarian at the HWS library. She's also our webmaster, if you will, and our SpringShare product owner. So any springy questions that we have, we direct to her, and she's kind of our funnel through which she either gives us the information or finds the answers for us. I'm the college archivist. I also have some, I'm going to say graphic design, really interests and hobbies, and just enough formal education with it to make me dangerous or make me think I'm dangerous. And then Tricia, our 3rd member, was the resource and integration librarian. She actually left our group at one point. Emily will get into more detail about that later. But when she joined us, she was part of the project because she was our chief coder and our lead in terms of accessibility. So between the 3 of us, we were a pretty well-rounded group. We were also the 3 newest librarians on the staff. So we were brought together in the hopes that we would have a fresh perspective on how to improve and update our website. When the 3 of us were pulled into a room, we were given a rather short list of parameters that we had to follow in this project. And the first thing we really had to focus on was the audience. We needed to remember that first and foremost, our audience was our on-campus community, in particular our students, followed by faculty and staff, and only then should we consider other audiences, local community members, researchers far and wide. Those we could give thought to, but we really needed to focus on our on-campus community first, which makes sense. Our second parameter, as I'm sure would be the case for anyone in this sort of situation is cost. Cost is always a thing, especially in libraries. We always wish we had more money. And our aim with this project was to try, if at all possible, to use SpringShare as the platform for our new website. SpringShare was the platform we were already using for the website we had at the time, so there would be no new or additional costs. We knew exactly what was coming at us from that perspective. And we were allowed to present or propose another platform if we found an absolute need. But spoiler alert, we did not. We stuck with SpringShare. The third parameter was in terms of design. We were not going to be able to hire any outside designers, or at least be extremely unlikely to do so. And so everything was going to fall to us, both in terms of design and execution. So this one was a little more exciting to me because I felt like I would get to bring a little bit more of my flair and my passion for design and actually apply it to my work. And finally, in regard to the timeline, we were given an open timeline. We were allowed to set our goals. We just had to keep the library leadership informed. So right away, we set our goals. Like I mentioned, we were presented with this project in August. By Thanksgiving, we wanted to have a sort of rough outline of what we thought we wanted to accomplish, a sort of wireframe, if you will. By Christmas, we wanted to begin work. And the hope was that by the start of the school year, the following fall, we would be able to present something and make it live. You will find out later how our timeline both changed and then changed again. But that was kind of our initial idea. I think we're ready to progress, Emily.
Okay, I'm sure you all can imagine. Oh, there's a lot of feedback there, sorry. I'm sure you all can imagine what kinds of some of the timeline challenges that we encountered beginning our project in August of 2019. But anyways, I want to show you guys what our website looked like before we started. So this, you can see there's a screenshot here of what our website looked like. And so one of the first things we did after we kind of the three of us sat down and worked out our timeline was we wanted to figure out what is it that's working well with our website and what is it that is maybe not serving us the way that we wish it would. And so we spent some time looking at our own website. We spent a lot of time looking at other people's websites to kind of figure out, like, what are the things that we like, what do we not like? And this is kind of a list of some of the things that we came up with. You know, we love that there were some images on it. We like that it's highlighting, you know, our archives makes fantastic online exhibits, and we love that those are getting highlighted. We like that it's pretty easy to find out how to contact people, librarians and other library staff. But we definitely found navigation to be a huge issue, as well as words, because it's just a little wordy. And at least every time we changed this, from my perspective as a staff member, so not quite the primary audience, I found that every time I had to add or change a link in this big kind of block of links here, I had a hard time finding them again. And that's me who knows what I'm looking for, let alone our students. And then here we have another page, which Tricia is going to talk to us a little bit about.
Right, this is the Archives and Special Collections page. So this was a little bit more my domain. And I don't know if you can really tell between the two different screenshots we have, but one of the things we really did not like is how different they look from one another. The Archives page,
for a second. So totally different, right? So it's
yes.
got like gray, a lot of white. This has some gray, but it has blue and
huge fonts. It just absolutely huge font. It just doesn't look like it's even part of the same website. This was also a sort of useless landing page that you would land on, and there's no information on it. It just takes you to other parts of the website. So it's just an extra click. We liked the images and we liked the parts. We just felt like it could be executed better. One of the things we don't have shown here that we did like is a subpage, the digital collections page, which we actually kept pretty similar in the new design. But all in all, it just wasn't working for us. There was no way to filter through the finding aids. it was just a long list that you had to scroll through and read about every collection. It just wasn't functional. It wasn't user friendly, and it didn't look uniform with the rest of the library's website.
It had a very separate feel. It felt like, you had to there was a little link for archives and special collections on the homepage, and then you came into this what felt like a totally different website. So it had a very kind of a big disconnect there.
Mm-hmm.
So we found,
when we take all this into consideration, we came up with 3 problems, and it makes a sort of unfortunate math problem of a lack of uniformity, insufficient navigation, and some accessibility shortcomings just added up to a really, really poor user experience. And this was something we needed to fix.
Yeah. So we came up with a new vision. And part of that involved we made a wireframe to kind of just map out what we were envisioning here. And you'll see as we kind of go along that what our wireframe here looks like is actually a little bit different than what our actual homepage looks like, because it was very much an iterative process. And so it was it changed and morphed kind of as we went along and as we got input from the library administration. But one of the big things that we wanted to do is we wanted to add a kind of global top level navigation, because our regular homepage didn't have any kind of navigation. So it had a very flat information architecture where you landed on that page and then you could go anywhere from that page, and that was it. And so we were hoping that adding this navigation would then allow, after you've moved on to a page, you can then get to anywhere else from that page, because you have this global top navigation that's going to be on every page. We also really wanted to integrate the archives into the archives kind of website into the rest of the library website. Our archives is housed in the library. They're part of our department. Tricia is a very integral part of our library team, as well as her staff members. And we wanted to have that kind of really cohesive feel. So those were kind of a couple of the big pieces that we were trying to envision, as well as trying to address some accessibility issues and acknowledging that a lot of our students, despite how many times I tell them that this is I always encourage them not to do this, but they do it anyways. They use their phones to use our website. And so we're trying to make it more mobile friendly, even though I will maintain until databases change that doing research in a database on your phone is really not a great experience. But I guess that's database is not my website. I don't know. So we asked ourselves, kind of 2 big questions we asked ourselves is what's working well and what is not working well. I feel like there's one other thing that we did here that I want to talk about. So the other thing that we did right around this same point was trying to figure out how are we going to keep ourselves organized, because a project of this kind of magnitude could get very messy and very out of control really quickly. And so and for all of you who use SpringShare products, you know that if you make a change, it's live instantaneously. And that was something that we spent a while trying to figure out, how do we address this issue of there's not a preview, there is a preview button, but there's not a way to make changes and see what they're going to look like without actually changing my live site. So what we ended up doing was we created a separate group, and we gave that group its own name so that we could make changes in this group and play with different coding bits and see how things on different pages would look without actually impacting our live website. And it worked really well. I highly recommend that as a way to be able to play with things and test how things are going to work without impacting your living site. And we also knew that we were going to have to be creating new guides as part of this project, but we didn't want them. We wanted to be able to easily find them in our big long master list of guides on kind of the back end. And so we decided to give them all, we developed a naming convention for them. And so we used the word zucchini at the beginning of every one of our guides for this project, because to kind of gather them together in our list. And it sounds really silly, we know, but we picked the word zucchini because it's at the very end of the alphabet. And not only does it start with Z, so it's right at the end, but the second letter is a U, which means that it would still alphabetize below our guide about Zotero. So we have a lot of zucchini pages and we have a zucchini group and all kinds of things zucchini, which probably you'll see more about later on.
And definitely raised some questions from our leadership when they started seeing zucchini pages pop up in the guide list. And it made perfect sense to them once we explained it. But you can imagine you'd be very confused. Why are there suddenly 4 different zucchini guides? Why are we talking about produce so much? But it worked really, really well. So we stuck with this sort of produce theme. Pick a theme that works for you, pick a word that works for you, just something that's an easy way to gather all your guides and know that it's all part of one project.
I can see in the chat that another person use the label aardvark to keep things at the top, which is great because aardvark is 2 A's right in a row. So it's hard to get anything higher up in the alphabet than that. So there's tons of ways to do it. And if nothing else, it'll like make you chuckle a little bit, even when you want to tear your hair out because there's something like crazy going on, either in the library as a whole or in your project. And you're like, zucchini, like, and it just makes you chuckle a little bit. So kind of, that was in my mind, I feel like that was kind of tangential, even though it's a very important part of our process to organize ourselves in a way. But we're going to talk a little bit about what we actually did. Which I'm sure is what you care about.
The fun part for me, the design. So one of our main questions is how do you make a guide look less like a guide? Mm-hmm. And here's where I had a little bit of an advantage, something I thought was going to be a disadvantage, but turned out to be a major advantage. I was a springy newbie. I had never even heard of SpringShare or LibApps or anything before I started here.
Which still baffles me, even though it makes sense. But.
I'd come from a corporate archive setting, so we were using not SpringShare. And so I just didn't have experience in it. I didn't know what it was. And so I asked a lot of questions. Like I was coming to Emily constantly, why does it work like this? Why is it doing this? Why don't the boxes lined up? Why is everything in a box? Why does it look like this is from the 90s? Just all sorts of questions. And sometimes I'd get the answer because SpringShare. And other times she'd look at me and go, I guess we don't have to do it that way, do we? And so that really helped drive some of our guide decisions, just my challenging the status quo, if you will. And sometimes I think Emily would just kind of like get nervous when I'd come to her with a question, because a lot of times what I wanted her to do could be done, but it wasn't super intuitive. And she'd have to do a lot of investigation. But she's brilliant. She found, I think, if the answer existed, she would find it. It was very rarely that she'd have to come back to me and say, that's just not possible in this. And even after that, it was usually after she'd sent letters to SpringShare and just doing everything she could.
And at least a couple times after I told her it wasn't possible, she came back to me like a month later and she was like, oh, yes, it is. And it's super easy. And here's how you do it. I'm like, oh, I had no idea.
I'm not a SpringShare newbie anymore, but I was. So Emily talked a bit about the top level being part of our primary navigation. That was a huge design choice, not just its existence, but what we wanted it to look like, what our menu items were going to be, what went in those menu items. You know, did we want the menu to stay open, or did we want it to just hover? You know, did you just hover over it to open it, click, hover? You know, all sorts of decisions like that. The next design choice we made was we wanted left-hand secondary navigation. So this meant that we were going to go from the top tab layout when choosing a template to the left side nav template. And this was a specific choice. The top level first, left-hand second navigation, sort of dual navigation system, is very, very familiar to users. It's something they're comfortable with. It's something a lot of websites use. So
think about your favorite store to shop online at.
Yeah, absolutely. Think about where you love to shop. It's probably using both forms of navigation. So we really wanted to utilize this. One, it would clean things up, but it would also make sure that information was less likely to be hidden by some sort of tab that our users just weren't finding. We also wanted to utilize a footer, and we created a custom footer. We wanted to really use this this real estate well. It's easy just to throw kind of like have to have information in there, like an address or a phone number. And that's a great place for it because it's on every page, it's easy to find. But something we hadn't thought of that we found a great use for were to put our hours in our footer. And yes, the downside to this is it's at the bottom of the page, but it also means it's at the bottom of every single page. So we didn't have to actively choose what pages had our hours and what didn't. It was just a matter of it's there, it's on every page. If you're on our website, you can just scroll to the bottom and know exactly when we're open or when our different parts of the library were open. And once you know it's there, it's easy to find. There's an end key on your keyboard, hit that, you're there, you know, when we're open and when we're closed. Something else we chose to utilize more were the floating boxes. So that why question, why is everything in a box? And turns out it doesn't have to be. And it can actually really clean up your page if you utilize the floating boxes. It makes your guide look much less like a guide, which was our goal because we weren't making a guide, we were making a website. We do have an example of how we did still use a box effectively. But for the most part, if you go on our website, you'll see that the boxes are gone, or at the very least, the borders around them are gone. There are a few cases where we did utilize that title bar at the top. Emily was so kind as to build us a couple of custom templates. The entries as well, while she was here, I should give her credit. She spent a lot of time on our homepage template, and Emily will get more into that bit as well. But our homepage is custom. And we have some custom pages underneath, a lot on the archives websites. Sorry about that, Emily. And also thank you again.
You have unique needs.
We did. We had some unique needs. I had some unique visions. And she really helped us execute that well. A little warning here, a little caution, don't go custom crazy on your templates. We didn't create all that many, and when we did, and again, here's where we use Zucchini. We have Zucchini templates. So that's how we knew we were limiting ourselves to only so many different templates because we didn't want a whole bunch of different layouts on our website just for the sake of having them. One of my pet projects were some custom buttons that we put on the homepage. We wanted to utilize buttons to have those links that were still available on the homepage, but we didn't want all the words we had before. So I designed some buttons. I wanted them to be unique to us. So I actually did design them myself in-house. And then we also wanted to make sure that they were, fairly obvious what they would lead you to, though we do still label each of them so you know where it's taking you. But this was a way to add a graphic element that was still useful. It wasn't just a pretty picture, which nothing wrong with pretty pictures. I love pretty pictures, plenty of those in the archives. But this was a way to add some graphic interest without going overboard. So those were some of our major design elements. There's many others minor on different pages, but these were some that hit overall. Also regarding the buttons, you'll see, because Emily's going to take us to our website here in a little bit, is we utilized a very familiar shape, similar to that view website button in the upper right corner. A rounded square. It probably looks familiar to you because I'm guessing most of you have smartphones and utilize apps. And so we thought it'd be a really smart idea to use this shape because it's something our students are just going to be so familiar with. They're going to know instantly how to use it. It's also not as harsh as a square, it's strictly square with 90-degree angles and sharp corners. So with that, we're going to show you just a couple of pages from our website so you can see what we've been talking about, and then we'll get back to some more information.
Okay, let's see here. Okay, so this is our live website, and this picture is going to finish loading eventually. So you can see these are the 6 buttons that Tricia mentioned that she designed because she's really stellar that way. And it was really fun for us to be able to kind of custom design them instead of, there are a million places that you can get icons and little buttons like this online, but it's really fun for us to have ones that are unique to us and for us to take a minute to try and figure out, okay, if I had to describe interlibrary loan in a picture, what would that look like? And I think she hit on some pretty cool things here. So we have our top level navigation with our drop-down menus. And then on many of these sub pages, there will be that kind of left-hand navigation that we talked about. We have a nice search bar for our discovery layer, as well as a couple of different tabs to search it in different ways. One thing that we added that changed between our kind of that initial wireframe that we showed you and the live today was this box at the bottom. When the pandemic happened, the archives decided that they wanted to collect stories. And so we added this box at the bottom of our homepage so that we could advertise that, which I probably should have let Tricia talk about since she's the archivist. I'm not.
Well, just to speak to this box, I would recommend if you're building a website, leave yourself spaces for additional boxes that you may or may not need. So this is the kind of thing where eventually we won't need this box anymore. So we can either put something else there or we can just hide it. But that way, when we need it in the future, it's there for us to use. Similar to at the top of the page, announcing our special announcement there. When we no longer need that, we can hide that, but it's there when we need it. And that way, when you need announcements or have special projects, you're not scrambling to, where do I put this? What do I do with this? How do I rebuild this? It's there.
So we wanted to show you a couple of the pages underneath our homepage as well, because there are some pretty cool ones that we have. So we're going to take a look at the archives and special collections, which we think we achieved our goal of integrating it better into our whole website. So this page here is our archival collections page, and it's the home of the finding aids. So I will let Tricia talk more because I'm excited about archives, but she knows more.
So first and foremost, it's still green. No weird teals here. But I love this page. It's a little off now because there is a third column that's going to be appearing in the next month or so because we have a third collection type. So that's why that's there. But you can see on the left-hand side how I used the left-hand navigation. And in this way, I used it as filters. So before I mentioned, we just had these long lists, which is exactly what Emily's scrolling through now. You can imagine if you were a student looking for some sort of information for a research project, how daunting this would be. I don't want to read through all those descriptions. I don't think anyone else is going to want to either. But now they don't have to. So now if they know, hey, I'm doing a research project on, I want to research student opinions and what students have to say. Yep, Emily, you guessed it, student collections. And there we go, a much shorter list to go through. And at least even if it's a long list, I know it's possibly relevant. Mm-hmm. Same if I want to look, if I'm researching something regional, I can go there and it'll pop up some collections there. Now, if you go back to all collections real quick for me, Emily, mm-hmm. Some of you might have noticed these little orange stars next to some of the collections. This was one of the ways we were able to make the website a little more interconnected. So if you see an orange star, it means we have a digital collection for all or some of the papers in that collection, and it will take you to that digital collection. And then from there, we have a link that will lead you to the finding aid. Which is what you would be able to access from that archival collections page too. So much more interconnected, helps people keep track of things and know when things are available online and when they aren't. And this is an archive space, so I can't control that as much. If some of you are wondering why it looks a little different.
Yeah, both of those other two pages were outside other products that we subscribe to. So.
Right, but they're connected. And they still are our resources. The other website in the archives and special collections realm to share would be the digital collections landing page there. Because I mentioned before, we really like that page. This is very similar to what it looked like before, once our photos load. We just made a few minor changes, but this is an example of how Emily built us a custom template so that we could achieve the layout we wanted. We use this template again for the exhibits. It looks very similar, so we don't need to go there, though I would recommend you check it out on your own time. But you can see here, we have fun images to get people excited about our collections, and then labeled underneath what the collection is. again, this was one of the pages we really, really liked before. So it just had a few minor tweaks. Colors with the bar at the top still being green, and then some fun images. So.
Yeah. And then one other page we wanted to show you was just our kind of basic about the library page. So you can see it's just a pretty basic page that it's still like you can still kind of tell that it's a SpringShare page, but I don't think it looks as much like a guide as guides have a tendency to look sometimes. So you can see we are using that left-hand navigation along with some subpages here to kind of help our readers navigate different policies about the library, or little bits about the history. And so this was just something that we wanted to kind of, I guess, highlight. And you can see that there's we liked having images. We thought it helps break up the text and show some of the cool people or places about our library and our campus. And this is also one of those places where you can see we have a box here that still uses the box header. You can still see it, but you don't see the border around the box, which makes it feel much less boxy. So this is kind of a taste of what our website looks like right now. But now we're going to kind of jump back into our presentation and talk for a minute about some of the challenges that we faced. Yeah. Yes, we are. Okay. So we faced a lot of challenges. One of them, the homepage, was the piece that definitely took the longest for us to make. It's an entirely custom template. It took us a little while to figure out how to get the rows and the columns to all work the way we wanted them to. And so that was definitely a challenge. Our team changed, and that was so crazy. So it was about March 2020, early March, I think, when our third team member, Tricia, took another job at a different library. And so she left and started a new job right as a global pandemic started. So I'm sure she had a lot of fun doing that. But that created a vacuum in our skill set. So we have Tricia, who has a nice design background. There's me, who I know a lot about SpringShare, but I do not think of myself as a software developer or a computer programmer. I know this much HTML, or I knew about this much HTML that I learned in library school. I'm like, cool, I can make things bold and underlined. And that's about it. And now I know this much HTML and some CSS. So I had to just put my head down and be like, okay, I'm gonna learn how to code, because now I'm the person who gets to do this. And that was fun. And then we had a pandemic, which absolutely changed our timeline and created some interesting challenges in the middle, which I'm sure many of you can relate to. We, it started with our original homepage. And after the pandemic started, we actually created 2 other homepages before the page that we just showed you, to kind of address some of the pandemic issues that were coming up in terms of accessing our resources offline or off campus, and kind of helping to promote some of these other resources, since our building was closed, but we were still open. We're still open for business. I can do research consultations with students just as easily on Zoom as I can in person. So that created some interesting challenges, as we're like, okay, we got to make some new homepages and just kind of slide them in here. Though ultimately, we actually, despite the pandemic, we actually did still have our website go live in time for fall semester, which was pretty fantastic.
Yes, we went from, we don't think we'll be able to meet the original timeline because we lost one of our team members, to being told, we really need you to meet that original timeline because we have new needs that we need to address now.
Yeah. And so that was, and we did. It was probably just a miracle. And then, of course, accessibility. Tricia was our person who knew the most about accessibility. And so Tricia and I have been kind of boning up on it ever since. And I am definitely still a novice. Like, I don't know a ton, like, I know more about it than I did before, but I am a long ways from knowing as much as I need to know. On that note.
And I can say the same thing, but nonetheless, I'm going to try to explain some of the things we really focused on in terms of accessibility. Really, the phrase at the bottom, learn and improve, then learn and improve some more, is absolutely key. And we are still doing this. We are still learning and improving and going back and tweaking to make things better. And it's an ongoing process. And it's okay that it's an ongoing process. But a couple things that we did focus on, we focused on headings. So when Emily was giving you the preview of our website, you noticed we had different sized text and some text that was bold, some that wasn't. We utilized the headings to give a sort of structure to the underlying bits of the website. And this is really key for anyone using a screen reader or keyboard navigation. So they're quite literally tabbing through. That way they don't have to listen to every single piece of text on the screen. They can tab to the sections they need to. Next, we focused on making sure that we had alternative text and that it was appropriate alternative text. Your alt text that you need can change depending on whether it's just an image adding flair to your website or does it serve a function. So on the About Us pages, those are images that are just there to look nice. So we would just describe what the image is. On the digital collections page, those are links. So I'm not describing what the image is, I'm describing where it's going to take you. So this is a very important distinction. The screen reader is going to read that it's an image or that it's a link, so you don't need to say that. You just need to say what it is. You need to be concise, but also portray and give enough information. So it's very tricky to do, but we did our best to make sure that we were doing that well. Finally, color choices. So on the right side of this slide, you can see how color can be really important. We have the same sentence over and over, but some of them are much easier to read than others. So you need to have appropriate contrast so that you can read all your text. And then you also need to think about link color. And link color was another challenge for us that we did not put on our challenge page, but it really, really was. Our school colors are very dark, and it blends in very much then with the black text around it. So choosing a color for links that stood out, but was still within our realm of acceptable color choices was quite a task. It's also recommended that in terms of links, especially when a link exists in bulk text, that there is not just one thing that indicates that it's a link, so don't just rely on color. To accomplish this, we also made our links bold, which means then we have to be a little bit more careful about when we use bold text elsewhere. But that way, if you see something bold, you have a little bit more of an indication that it's a link. We also, don't tell anybody, we made our school green ever so slightly lighter for links so that there was a little bit more contrast. I don't think you can tell, but we don't need to get in trouble for that one either. Another key thing to remember when you're making links, don't use phrases like click here or click on the button, the red button. Color might not be able to be distinguished, and click here doesn't really give a screen reader any indication on what it is. So create meaningful links. These are just a few of the things that we really focused on. It is by no means anywhere close to everything that needs to be accomplished. There are many, many wonderful free tools available online to help you with these things. Everything from are my colors contrasting enough to downloading a screen reader. See how your page functions. It's very difficult to use when you're new at it, and it's very overwhelming. But it's really helpful to know how things are being read. Because just because it looks nice might not mean it's accessible or functions nice for people who are using accessibility tools. And we really do want to design a website for everyone. All right. So at this point, are there any questions for Emily or I, more regarding the why our website looks the way it does or why we did things a certain way? We're going to do a little bit of a demo to show you how to do some of these things. So if you have some of those type questions, we can get to those after we show you the demo in case we happen to be so lucky as to answer them ahead of time.
I see a question here from Marisol, who asks, I have a few questions. I missed the details of your timeline. How long did this take from initiation to launch? Also, overall, how much of a learning curve was there? Also, did you document your process? So we were tasked with this in August of 2019, and we launched our website in August of 2020. So it took us about a year to do. And we got kind of lucky in the sense that our particular institution teaches fairly few courses during the summer. And so like my workload is a lot lighter during the summer than it is during the fall or the spring semesters. And so that gives, like, at least for me, that means I had a lot more time to work on it during those kind of summer months in 2020. So just because our timeline was a year doesn't necessarily mean that another institution might need longer or shorter for that matter.
And the pandemic played a factor in it too, because for me anyway, working from home, there was a lot of aspects of my job that I couldn't do because I didn't have access to my collections, which meant I suddenly had a lot more time to devote to website design.
Mm-hmm. In terms of learning curve and documenting our process, yes and no. I already knew how to use SpringShare products, which, at least just like generally how to use them. I've been using them for years. And so in that sense, there was a little bit of a learning curve because I was doing a lot more custom things than out of the box things. But my learning curve definitely was a lot higher in terms of teaching myself how to code, which is not impossible by any stretch of the imagination. There's tons of great like courses and YouTube videos out there and books to teach yourself how to code, and just take some time. In terms of documenting our process,
I would say we documented decisions more than the process.
Yes.
When we made a decision, we documented why we did try anything and everything that we could think of, even if we thought it was going to look bad or function bad. We still tried it just to prove to ourselves that we were right, or sometimes wrong. So we definitely documented decision makings, and we do have an internal guide that's a style guide that explains what our decisions were, what size the photos need to be, and how to make alt text and all those different types of things.
Mm-hmm. I'm just realizing now that I'm not sure if I'm supposed to be reading the questions or if our chat moderator is supposed to be reading the questions to us.
Whatever you would prefer. If you want me to read them, I can.
That sounds great. Why don't you read them, Molly?
You got it. So moving on to Josh's question, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Did you have to purchase a custom domain, or did your college provide it?
So we luckily do have our domain through our college, through our colleges, and we were already using our library.hws.edu domain with our previous website. So that's something that actually we kept with our next iteration.
On Go Live Day, we just put up a note saying, please excuse any confusion you encounter today. Mm-hmm. And then when it was done, we took it down and hoped we hit everything.
Yeah. And luckily we had our Go Live be a couple weeks before the semester started, when it was not nearly as busy. So we didn't get any complaints about the outages. So hopefully they were not too many.
The next question's from me. Did you have a main college communications office or anything similar that either provided you with guidance on your design decisions or that you needed to seek approval from on your design?
I'll take this one. We do have, we were told we could contact the Office of Communications if we felt we needed to for any help with the graphics or anything like that. We ended up not contacting them directly, but we did rely heavily on the style guide that they provide. So that's how we ended up with colors and that sort of thing, and making sure fonts and all were okay. But we are a lucky department, possibly the only department on campus that, as of now and currently, we own our website and are allowed to design it as we need to. Had we tried to do anything too crazy, I'm sure we would have heard, but we played nice, and so we've not had any complaints.
Wonderful. Next, Maggie missed the beginning, but she's wondering if, just to confirm, you were using the LibGuides CMS.
That's a great question, Maggie, because I actually never said that we were, but we are. We do have LibGuide CMS, which if you're going to host your website in, or if you're going to like try and do something kind of like this, I find was really helpful. It gives us one of the big things that the LibGuide CMS gives you over the plain LibGuides is the ability to have multiple groups, which was really helpful in allowing us to kind of iterate our design process in an environment that wasn't going to affect our live one.
And the last question we have is from Holly. Did you have a chance to try out your designs on student users for feedback?
No.
We did not.
We did not.
When it came down to it, it was summertime and we didn't have many students around and we're all working from home and we did not have a chance to do any testing with our student users. But we have had some pretty good feedback from our students since it went live. They seem to enjoy the website and find it useful for them.
With that, let's try to demo some of these things that we did so that you can kind of see how to do it. Okay, so Emily and I, we built a web page, which right now looks very, very, very much like a guide.
We built you a guide.
We built you a guide.
The guidiest of all the guides.
That we would really like to function like a website. With the information that we presented to you today, Emily, we went back to the...
oh, I'm sorry. That's probably my bad. Let me fix that.
The PowerPoint.
There we go.
All right, thank you. So we're going to walk you through some of these things, and we're starting to run just a little short on time, so we're going to get started. The first thing we wanted to do is make it into the correct colors, the colors that are our school colors, which are a lovely dark green and a rich purple, which again have very little contrast, but really give an identity. So this would be a system level change or a group level change. Emily's going to be doing it in the group level today because we don't need to be changing live things.
So you can see that I created us a little SUNYLA group, and we have one little guide in it. It's our guidey guide for you. So if you were going to change your colors for your LibGuide site, you could go ahead into either into your group, or you could do it through the look and feel, the kind of the global look and feel. And so we're going to go to our header footer tab boxes tab, and we're going to use this bottom one to change our box color, our tabs and our box colors. And this will be this moment of truth where we see if I can remember all the codes. Not 593D. So this is our school green, our William Smith green. And we chose to make our kind of inactive tabs a gray color that to distinguish them from the active tabs. So it's this kind of a medium gray. And then we're using white text. And then in our boxes, we're going to have our very, very few borders are going to be green as well. The backgrounds are going to be green. No, it's not. Just kidding. Those backgrounds are going to be white. This background is going to be green, which now I'm realizing I should have copied and pasted this. And then this header font is also going to be white. And now we will find out if I did this right, because every time I've practiced, I've done it wrong.
Your border color is wrong there, Emily.
See, look, this is what 593D.
We have this number memorized. We've used it a lot.
Though ironically, we have three main school colors, green, purple, and orange, and I only know the green. It's the only one I know.
Yes.
But so that should do that. And so now if we go back to our kind of sample guide here, we can go ahead and refresh our page and everything should turn green. Haha, it did. But it still looks pretty guidey.
We also talked about that navigation that we really want, the header and the footer, the custom bits that we made. So we only have 10 minutes left, Emily. So if we can quickly dump those in. This is custom code, which Emily has here, and she's going to tell you, and I'm going to agree, it looks very, very intimidating when you see it. It's a lot of code, but it accomplishes a lot as well.
Okay. I have the right code here. All right, so we're back in that same kind of group look and feel place that we were before. We're just going to go ahead and pop this code that I already have written into this is our header code. So we're going to go ahead and save it. And we're going to make sure that we're excluding the system level header. And then we're going to do the same thing in our footer box with hopefully also the right code.
We understand this is very much like a cooking demo where we're showing you and making it seem like a much quicker process. The build is much more time consuming. The actual application here is much quicker.
Right. And then we're going to exclude our system level header here. And we should see some beautiful headers and footers pop in. Oh, except I forgot. Okay, sorry. This is that moment I forgot one of them. And then because we have a custom header and footer, we also have some custom CSS. So after we've copied and pasted our header and footer in, we're going to add our custom CSS code so that it is actually the way we want it to look. And then we're going to save it. But I'm really weird and I like my backend, my edit side of SpringShare to just look regular out of the box. And so I'm going to make sure we don't include that on the guide edit pages. I'm going to save that again. So now when I refresh, it should actually look the right way.
Yay!
Ta-da! Now we have a beautiful green header. And then if we scroll down, there's a green footer as well.
Yay, we're getting closer. So the next thing we talked about we did was in reference to the navigation. So right now we still have those top tabs and we would really like to have left nav. And this is a quick fix. This is done at the guide level. So this is the back end of our guide.
Yep, so this is our edit side of our guide. Probably this is something that's familiar to you, changing the guide navigation layout. It's one of the easiest ways to make your guides look different. And you can see that we have a million different templates, some of which are zucchini ones and some of which are not. And we're just going to change it to our system default side nav layout. And go ahead and save it. And if you've ever done this before, you'll know that if you have things in multiple columns, it will all rearrange itself, which is entirely the reason why this guide only has one column, because we didn't want to have to rearrange things for you. But you can see now we have our left-hand nav. And if we pop back over to our preview, which I'm sorry if I'm making you all seasick from jumping between tabs so much, you can see we have our side navigation now and our big column of content.
Wonderful, getting closer yet. All right, the next thing we want to do is get rid of the boxes. So to me, that's one of the things that screams guide, and that is also done at the guide level. Unfortunately, this is time consuming. You have to do it with each box. You just have to go in and make it a floating box.
This is where that cooking presentation, and then 20 minutes later, we'll pull it out of the oven and it will look like this. Ta-da! Now it's just really boring looking text. Now what, Tricia?
Now we need to add some styled headings. So this is the functional bit that we need to add. This is done again at the guide level in each box, just in the rich text field. And if
may or may not pop up.
Which may or may not open.
Here we go. So this is a great opportunity to employ those headings that we talked about when we talked about accessibility. So the headings here have various, I think this is supposed to be various kind of predefined presets. But you can actually change those. You can change them. So you could change the size of it or the font if you wanted to. We're going to make this one bold. But the heading provides information for the screen reader to tell it so that you don't have to read all the text to find the one piece at the bottom that you're really interested in.
And we really utilize 3 different headings. Heading 3 for a sort of page website title, heading 4 for a section title, and heading 5 for subsection. So if we can see the live preview again, we're going to again do that cooking show sort of demonstration. And you can see what we have here. Finally, some custom coding, which I don't know that we have time to share today how we did it, but Emily, if you could just show what we did.
So we did a couple other things just to kind of add some other interest or some visual interest. So we changed the background of this one particular box and the text in it. We also added these pictures, which actually is not code. We just added the pictures. And then the other kind of really simple custom coding that we did was we added this stroke on the side of this gallery box. So these 2 like kind of wide green stripes, excuse me, are actually the side borders of that box, but we left the top borders and the bottom borders off and made the side ones really thick to just kind of pull your eye to these before pictures of our website.
And these, again, are all things you would do at the guide level. They're relatively simple. I don't even know as much as Emily knows, but I can do a lot of these changes myself. Google's great. And there's some really great websites out there. Emily, if you could put the link to this guide in the chat, that way people can access it and explore it a little bit on their own. It also has a lot of the information we presented today, and in a little bit more detail in some instances. With that, I know we have like 5 minutes, but are there any questions?
I know that was so much information so fast. So
that was wonderful. And it was, what a stroke of genius to have the separate pages in that guide already ready to go. Regular Julia Childs here.
we knew that, you know, anyone who's made boxes floating knows it takes a couple minutes. So we went, what can we do faster? We can show you once and then say, ta-da!
Even simple changes take a lot of time.
Thanks, Beth. I'm glad that we could reaffirm your recent library update. Yeah, if anybody has any questions at all.
Since it doesn't look like we have any questions right now, though, people, please feel free to type in if you do have some. Can you just show us where that custom code would go, Emily, just so people are aware?
Absolutely. So in our, this particular custom code, because it was very specific for specific boxes, is in our guide. And so it is in the guide custom JavaScript and CSS box. And you can see it's just right here. It's inside little style tags. And then the other kind of really interesting piece about it is that it has the selector has this like kind of long weird number, which is what makes it do it to one specific box. So that's the unique ID that belongs to that box, as opposed to having it target all the boxes. And then if you're looking for that number, you can find it when you click on the little pencil to edit your box, and then it's this box ID right here. You just copy and paste it in. And there's a really cool FAQ about it. SpringShare has fantastic documentation, and so they have a really nice FAQ about finding the box ID, which is down here at the very bottom of our page in the simple custom coding box. I guess I'll put it back on the preview side because that's a little prettier. Yeah, so right down here, there's some nice FAQs about adding custom code.
There's still no questions in the chat right now. Go ahead and enter them if you have them. But I suppose I have one question on my own. What are your next steps from here, right, in your project? Is it user testing? Is there something further you're planning on building out?
So the next...
Funny you should ask that. Our next project is what we have named our Yuzu project, because we're sticking with produce there.
Which apparently yuzu is a kind of fruit. Y-U-Z-U. I'd never heard of it before, but it alphabetizes really nicely.
Yes, and we are actually going through a guide redesign project. So actually looking at the parts of our website that actually are research guides and not web pages, but trying to bring them so that they still look like guides, but they look a little bit more like our website, so that there's a cohesive look between those now. So some of our style choices are similar to what we've made on the website. Some are different. But that has been, and that's not just the two of us. There's a team of 5 of us working on that. That's a much bigger scope.
Bigger project.
But that's probably the next. Other than that, we're just really keeping our ears open for any other pain points that people would notice on the new website, so we can address those as they come up. Anytime we learn more about accessibility and making that better, we're addressing that.
Like one thing we had decided, I personally have a preference for when I click on a link for it to open in a new tab in my browser. But in my learning about accessibility, I've discovered that that's actually it can create some problems for people who are using a screen reader or who have vision challenges, because it can be really confusing. You click on a link and then nothing seems to happen. And so initially when we were redesigning the website, we had decided to go with, if you're clicking on a link that goes to an outside, to something that's not part of our library, it would open in a new tab. And that's actually been something that we've changed. And we decided, okay, actually just because it's my personal preference doesn't mean that it's going to be the most accessible for our users. And for a lot of people who do know that they have that preference, they also know how to right click and have it open in a new tab by themselves. So
wonderful.
Definitely an iterative process.
Yeah. Thank you for that takeaway. We are at 3:15. Thank you so much, Emily. Thank you, Tricia, for this presentation. Very useful. Wonderful job.
Thank you. And thank you all for going on this journey with us.
Yes, thank you to everyone. We hope you got something out of it. Even if it's just new ideas, if you knew how to do all this, if it's just new ideas, sometimes that's great as well. So
yeah.